pursuing accountability on policy and implementation. It's time for another DJL7 candidate interview.
Hey, what's up? It's your boy DJL7 today. Well, I'm actually interviewing every single candidate running for New York City office, but this is actually a special candidate right here. I'm going to let her introduce herself, though. Go ahead.
Well, thanks. My name is Diane Sare, and I am a LaRouche independent candidate for U.S. Senate. I am running against Chuck Schumer in the 2022 federal elections.
Okay. Now, you are interesting to me because I have seen you actually at several events, not just, the Free Assange one event, which is very rare for candidates to attend there. But I also saw you at the Wall Street Bets event. So I know that you are someone who's really interested in free speech. I know you're someone who's about the people. Then I hear this whole LaRouche thing and it kind of goes off into this field that I'm not really as familiar with. So let me just turn off this fan for a second. Let me just make sure that the audio is very clear. I want people to hear you very well. You're also one of the earliest moving into a very important space, as in terms of you are running against Charles Schumer. Am I correct?
Correct.
A very
yes.
high-profile senator, right? Now we know that
Yes.
there's and I'm particularly involved with this thing called Independent Congress, where the House of Representatives seats, because of redistricting, right, may be easier to beat than a regular incumbent. But you said, screw all the easy races. Let me take on, right, the establishment, heart of it itself, Charles Schumer. You know the establishment will do everything they can to prevent him from losing. What made you ready to take on, the hardest of the hardest races?
Well, in a way, I don't think it's totally about Chuck Schumer, although, he strikes me as I wouldn't say he's intelligent. People say he's intelligent. I don't get that sense from him. He is small-minded, feral, and he's been in Washington for about 40 years now. I think it'll be 42 when we get to 2022. It'll be 24 years in the Senate, 18 years in the House of Representatives. And he has totally lost touch with the people that he's supposed to represent. He is absolutely the spokesperson for Wall Street and the City of London. And if you heard his interview with Rachel Maddow, when Trump early on had said he wanted to reorganize the intelligence agencies, Schumer said, this is a stupid thing to do. They have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. So he's made himself the mouthpiece of the most corrupt elements of our, what you could call the secret government, I guess. People who get us into endless wars, who wiretap everybody, who are engaged in all kinds of blackmail and other unsavory practices.
Now, I think that Schumer actually does a great job of kind of like blending in, kind of like a chameleon. He says a lot of things that seem pro-worker. He says a lot of things that seem good. But if you examine his background, right, his whole funding kind of came from the Wall Street situation. And if you look at New York, where Wall Street is, and someone who's in power there without like a lot of problems or without a lot of fighting against Wall Street, there's a very clear reason why. So I feel like there's a lot of a lot of the attention we see from the media, even from the progressive media, focuses on AOC, focuses on Pelosi, right? Yeah, but we hear very little about Schumer so a lot of people don't really understand the depth of the problem or what the problem even is. You get what I'm saying?
Sure. And I would turn it around a little bit, actually, because I think the American people have to take some accountability for this mess. And that's also partly why I'm running my campaign as I am, which is to build a real grassroots movement across the state of New York and to create an educated citizenry. Because frankly, Trump said a few things that were very important when he came in. Good relations with Russia, good relations with China, end the forever wars, build infrastructure. He even called for Glass-Steagall at one point. Then he brought in some terrible people like Mnuchin, Bolton, Pompeo, etc. But where were the American people? People sat back and...
This is the point where I start to really try to understand what you are as a candidate. So the thing is this part of your whole LaRouche thing, your whole LaRouche tie, like this foreign policy thing, or is this your own development? Because I don't really know. Yeah.
Okay. Lyndon LaRouche, let me just say, is probably the greatest genius that our nation has yet produced. And I put it that way because he believed, as I do, that there should be new geniuses born in every generation, and no one but a raving egomaniac would ever want to be the most brilliant person ever in human history. But someone who, by the age of 14, had mastered the writings of Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, the guy who actually invented the calculus. He was.
Wait, which calculus? I thought Newton invented calculus.
No, that was a fraud. It's not true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Newton actually didn't discover the laws of gravity either. That was Johannes Kepler. Newton was a crazy alchemist who had all kinds of believed in magic and things like that, and was promoted as a way of keeping people from actually being able to recreate the creative discoveries of history. Okay. And so LaRouche mastered these people. In fact, he recruited a youth movement right after 9/11, where he said the most important thing for young people is to know how to tell if something is true or not. In other words, forget all the stupid multiple choice tests and right answers. How can you develop in your own mind a sense, as Socrates did, for which he was, of course, poisoned and killed? And so that was LaRouche's approach to mass recruitment. But internationally, he was fighting since the 1970s to completely reorganize the entire financial system.
Okay, so the thing is that I don't really care, to tell you the truth, whether Newton found gravity or Kepler found gravity. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. That's the point for, like, you know, honestly, I wasn't there. I'm not able to check the facts myself, so I can't really make that call. But really, I'm interested in more the politics, right? And I do see some good alignment, right, as in terms of, like, the Assange thing. I see other, like, alignments, right? On this Newton thing, I'm not sure that I'm really aligned with you on that, but I'm not against you either. You know what I mean? Maybe you're right. I just don't really care to have time to figure that out. But as in terms of maybe, like, LaRouche and his economic policy or his, you know, financial policy, things like that, what is that? What is it libertarian in nature? Is it left-wing? It seems to be a mix.
No, it's strongly American system. Mm-hmm. Because what most people are not aware of, and frankly, it was a discovery for him, was that when our nation was founded against the British Empire, against Adam Smith, against free trade, the idea was, and if you read Hamilton, which most people haven't done, they've gone to the musical, but they should actually read Hamilton's papers. What you see is that the point about economics is the human mind. That is what transforms your system. What determines what is a resource? We're all obsessed about petroleum, right? People say, oh, we have these wars in the Middle East because we just want to grab petroleum. Well, when did that become a resource? What if we were still burning wood? What if we had a society that was based on nuclear power, which is far more efficient than burning wood or burning fossil fuels, for example? You would change the world. So the point about the American system is that the government does have the right and is required to direct credit for those things that will raise the standard of living, that will increase the productivity of your workforce. So if you think about what happened when our country was founded, even though we had massive debt from the revolution, like $57 million, which was a lot, 1783.
Yeah.
What Hamilton did is he funded that. He said, no, we can't just write off the debt. We have to repay every nickel. We're going to consolidate it. We're going to have a national bank, and we're going to direct credit into what? Building canals, building roads, harnessing water power like Paterson, New Jersey.
Okay, so let's take a look at that, because the thing is that the roadway structure of the United States actually has been blamed, right, to a certain extent for pollution and the use of cars and trucks and stuff like that with our economy. But it also has been good for us too. Like, let's be honest, right? Our roadway system, because of it's allowed our economy to grow. So it's had its good and bad points, right? So as in terms of, right, how are decisions made within this unit, right? Because it sounds like a lot of decisions have already been made. So how is determined, right? Yeah, the canals, which canals, which roads?
No, yeah. That's the problem we have today, because we have this Federal Reserve System, which is totally unconstitutional. It's a private bank. They don't have to answer to anyone. They have meetings in private, and all they're doing is inflating a bubble of garbage.
Yeah.
And what we have right now is an actual inversion. The higher the stock market goes, the more they have looted the physical economy. So the more the stock market goes up, the lower your standard of living is going to be.
So what is your solution to tank the stock market? What are your solutions here?
Yeah, we should, but what you've got to do is put the system through kind of a bankruptcy reorganization. And one really good way to do that would be to reinstate the Glass-Steagall separation. Because if you're going to separate banks by function, that is, you don't separate them arbitrarily by size. You say, what are they doing? Are they gambling? Are they placing bets on what the weather's going to be next Sunday? Or what's going to happen to GameStop shares? Or what are they betting?
Okay, so I appreciate you in that in a way that I think that a lot of others can't, because I can see that there's a large overarching, like, detailed kind of plan that's kind of setting in here. So I could see that once I start to talk about one thing, you're starting to touch about aspects of other things that are really all coming in. So I appreciate that. I'm not sure a lot of my audience is ready for that. So let me try to, like, put it like this, right? It's your first day in office, right? Yeah, you have new responsibilities. What are you trying to impart? Because it sounds like, you're already have, like, you're ready to go at like 100 the second you get in the door. So what do you? So
Well, believe it or not,
yeah.
I actually want to get a bunch of these things done before I take office. That's the point of creating a movement. I mean, I think we should have a movement in the country that's irresistible, that just steamrolls over these people.
Okay.
I mean, trying to kill us, right? If you look at the economy, it's terrible, right?
So you have an overarching vision, right? But which one of those, maybe one of those actions you're working on now, or which one of those actions kind of like has the most going for it? How can I really kind of help maybe push one of those actions over the edge?
Well, I think the Glass-Steagall, there's two things that are urgent. I would say there's two. There's one foreign. The U.S. had better get together with Russia and China minimally. Now, we have a really bizarre situation because President Biden has, he extended the START treaty. He claims he wants to talk to Russia and then turns around and slaps these unbelievable sanctions on Russia for crimes that they didn't commit. They didn't hack our elections. They didn't poison Navalny. They didn't invade Crimea, right? And Russia is reacting because if anyone knows the history of World War II, you cannot back a bunch of Nazis on the border of Russia. What that means, every single Russian family lost people in that war. So you have an extremely dangerous showdown right now. So we've got to address that, because the first thing to solving any of this is we have to be alive. If we have a nuclear war, we're not going to be alive and we're not going to be able to solve it. So I would say, in a sense, that's number one. It's super urgent. And then domestically, you need this Glass-Steagall. We've got to create the conditions where you level the playing field. But once you do Glass-Steagall, what you will see, you're going to take all the hot air out of the markets. So you're suddenly going to be cash poor. It'll affect people's pension funds, their 401ks, their stocks, and there would be a big panic unless at the same time you scrapped the Federal Reserve, either nationalize it or create a national bank to issue credit. In other words, instead of bailing out garbage, we should be bailing out our municipalities, right? Make sure the sewage treatment plant is funded, the sanitation, the things that keep people going, prioritize that.
Yeah. Now, to tell you the truth, I actually do, right? It's actually funny because I was going to write a paper in college about why corporations should be legalized because, right, they're really just technology, they're financial just solutions, right? And the way what corporations are has developed and changed as time has gone on, and we've removed their liability, right, and given them more, financial power as time has gone on, and I believe that's been a mistake, right? Because, a little mosquito might create a certain amount of damage. It could cause malaria. It could even kill you, right? Yeah. But a giant, right? If you have a giant, a small action can cause much more damage. So the thing is that, you have to really be careful about creating these huge corporate giants. So let's suppose that we say, okay, we're going to take all the money out of the market right now. Then there's a huge power vacuum that's created, right? Because now the ownership of these large institutions will fall apart, right? Now they have to liquidate and give all the money back to the shareholders, right? Now, all of a sudden, these markets are just open for anybody to enter, correct?
Well, I would say if you look at the way FDR did the bank reorganization when they had the bank holiday, it was a little more nuanced. I mean, you're really going to have a team of people who can take these things on a case-by-case basis. So you don't just want to detonate everything, right? You're going to have to see what's productive and what's not, and you're going to have to protect the things that are real, that human beings, I mean, what it comes down to is the measure of your economy is the standard of living of the people. I mean, very concrete measures, life expectancy,
Okay.
infant mortality, right?
So, let's say that maybe you're like targeting biomedical or corporations first, or like maybe companies like Apple first. Like, who is really first to go in this corporate takeout?
Well, big tech would be a nice target. We certainly have enormous censorship problems. I think there are tax laws and there's also monopoly laws that are not being enforced. I looked it up not long ago and I don't remember the codes, but frankly, by just reinforcing some of the legislation that's already on the books, you would be able to break these things up into more manageable and regulatable entities.
Okay.
And also, you also have what Kennedy did, something called the investment tax credit, where if someone's making an obscene profit, they should be taxed very heavily unless they're going to turn that profit around and reinvest it in making a new discovery, hiring a bunch of new people. In other words, you want to incentivize, again, you want to incentivize the things that actually improve the functioning of your economy as a whole.
Right. So, Diane, look, I interview a lot of candidates. I don't know if you know that this is actually what I'm doing, like, like crazy. And the thing is that honestly, you're standing out from the rest. And I know this is like easy for me to say about anybody, but let me just point out the reasons why. And I want people to understand this. First of all, right, let's take a look at it right now. It's Saturday around that 10 o'clock in the morning, yeah? And a lot of other candidates, I can't fucking believe it, right? They're sleeping or they're doing, I don't know how the fuck they're even running, right? Why are they even running? Number two, right? You look at the presentation, the camera, the background, the dress. I appreciate that. I mean, she comes always professional, and she's always out there, and she's at the events too. So the thing is that, right? I'm not sure how much on the policy line, 100%. I'm still learning on that, right? Because I could see it's very complex, right? But the thing is that I see that you're out there doing the work, making these, talking about not just assuming leadership now, but in it for the long haul. So what organizations are you already like working with? It seems like you were touching many organizations.
Well, it's interesting that you ask that. I started a Friday night symposium series because of the censorship and the major issues that people are facing and not in the press. So I took the case of Indian Point, the nuclear plant, which is about to be shut down. When the two towers were functioning, the two reactors, it provided 25% of the energy for Manhattan. They've replaced one of the towers with a natural gas plant. So for all the environmentalists who are concerned about CO2, you're going to get a lot more emissions already from that. The other plant, I don't think they particularly have a plan, excepting one thing I read from a group called Nuclear New York, who spoke on my platform, is that they're going to have to offload that power production in dirty old plants, and they said mostly in poor areas, right?
Right.
So I reached out to people who worked at Indian Point, and the mayor of Buchanan, the town's income is going to cut by 50% when this closes, and brought them into the platform. That doesn't mean they all endorse, you know what I'm saying? People who run 501c3s, they can't endorse your candidacy. But I'm interested in pulling these groups into a dialogue. Last night, I had a really fascinating discussion with two former inmates. One, maybe you know, Shawana Vaughn, who founded this group called Silent Cry Inc., who is trying to get legislation through the Senate for prison post-traumatic stress disorder. Very interesting. And then a man who just got out of prison after 25 years, who's with the Prison Writers Project. Because one of the things that's clear, if you look at the nursing homes, you look at the homelessness, you look at the prisons, we have a huge population. FDR called it the forgotten men. I'm calling it the invisible men and women. There's a whole category of millions of people in this nation who we are not supposed to think about. And they represent an enormous potential. A lot of these people are young, they're smart. if we were going to do something great with our nation, we need every talented person fully employed and engaged.
I appreciate that, but what I really want to find out more is I want to understand more about yourself, right? The thing is that
Hmm.
you could stand a lot to gain from being like a political shapeshifter and maybe, you know how to present yourself. I could see yourself jumping in with DSA or maybe some other group right easily, but you've decided to stick to your own message and your own plan. What gives you the conviction? Why are you in this so hard? Right? You're obviously right not right. You could easily right gain points by shifting and giving people what they want to hear. Right? Why are you so? What gives you this drive?
That's an interesting question. Um, Partly, I think it's my Quaker upbringing. When I was a kid, I read the biography of John Woolman, who was a very early Quaker who fought slavery in New Jersey and went to jail.
Right.
So I always had this idea if you do something really good, you're probably going to go to jail from an early age. And I just, and when I heard a conference where Lyndon LaRouche spoke, but also many leaders from Argentina, from Africa, from different places, I was naive. I thought, oh, these poor people in these countries, they're starving because they had a drought or they had a tornado or they had an earthquake. It didn't occur to me that someone was actually committed to keeping these people oppressed and backwards. And when that became very clear, I said, I'm an American. I have more power than millions of people in these other places, and my government, combined with other governments and financial institutions, is imposing misery around the world. And I cannot live with myself if I sit by on this planet as an American citizen and don't do something about it.
Okay. Here's my question to you regarding your whole like a LaRouche relationship thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So the thing is that I myself consider myself a student of Martin Luther King. I like that, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
Malcolm X. Those are just the ones I got exposed to, right? It's kind of like pop American culture. Sorry, that's what I got. You know what I mean? They don't talk about LaRouche that
That's
much in
not
school.
pop.
Well,
They're both profound thinkers.
yeah, but that's the ones that the school lets us know about, right? They don't talk about
Right.
LaRouche, right? You know, they don't really,
Right.
they're not ready to go deeper than that. You know what I mean? That's as far as they're willing to go, if they're willing to go there. You know what I mean? Which less and less now, right?
Right.
Anyways,
Right.
yeah.
Yes.
So the thing is that I looked at like Martin Luther King, his ideas of nonviolent protest, and I was really inspired by Tulsi Gabbard, and I felt like what she was going through was kind of like an evolution because I felt like Martin Luther King during his era, the press might actually report on some of the wrongs that were going on. But now you could see the press is now controlled by the corporations, and now they just don't report on what's wrong. You know what I mean? They just don't report about the wars anymore. So you don't get to see,
Right.
and the people won't like have like a Vietnam. They won't like see those pictures and feel bad about the war. So I feel like and I asked her if she was if she saw herself or if she understood what she was doing as a continuation of Martin Luther King's nonviolent protest work, and she said no, right? She didn't really get that. That was I was like, okay, whatever. But yourself, right? You take a look at LaRouche, and he was actually dealing with a different series of he was different. He was doing a slightly different reality. You know what I mean? Times were different. Technology was different. Now you're dealing with from a LaRouche framework in a new era. Are you like? Have you maybe kind of like? Do you have like maybe a? See, like I come from like maybe more like a Asian style where you have like someone who developed a certain idea and you come from under that style, but maybe you branch it out in a certain direction. Would you say yourself like a student of a LaRouche that is branching out in a certain style of thought, or are you just maybe a traditional LaRoucheist? You get what I mean? You get what I mean?
Yeah, that's a funny question because I would say his thinking was really universal. So you can't really represent LaRouche unless you also are developing your own ideas. I mean, we have to go beyond it. He said repeatedly, people have to take what I've discovered and go beyond that, build on it. And there are certain aspects that are a little different. I mean, my emphasis, for example, on classical music. That's my training and background as a musician, although I've been a political organizer for 35 years almost. So that's something unique, I guess.
That's cool. I've been an organizer for a while too, so I recognize your style and the way you're going about the business, right? And about approaching the community organizations. And honestly, I love that. I'm not sure our politics or our vision is the same, but I can tell you're the one who's going to be getting things done. And honestly, rather than someone who tells me everything I want to hear, I want someone I could trust. And the fact that you're willing to take a slightly different stand on some things, I don't give a damn if you don't think Newton found gravity or not. If we found enough that we can agree on, not that I really know or care, you know what I mean? Not that I'm really saying he did, you know what I mean? But
Right.
you know what I mean? Like that's different for me, you know what I mean? So that's I'm okay with that being different, you know what I mean? But if we're same in enough the other ways, which just the activism and the Assange thing is huge. So I'm very interested. Now, what do you think to take on Schumer? That's cool. But you know being an organizer as you have, you know everything's gonna work against you, right?
Yes.
So
Except the people. I mean, look,
yeah,
what you said at the beginning about these races with the census and so on. So the Congress is going to be all thrown into a little bit of chaos, which is good. Now the Senate race is not, because every state has 2 senators. But the thing does work together. So I think there's going to be reverberations
now
throughout.
there is some media out there besides the mainstream media. Have any of them been receptive to your campaign or anything like that, or?
Some I haven't pursued it enough yet. I actually have a challenge. I need a more robust team who are very aggressive. I'll put it that way. And I'm working on recruiting people to do some of these things. But there is an openness. I found actually there is an openness.
Well, you know about our people. We're interested in finding out any other groups that's possible that existing. Also, have you ever heard of something called Wolfpack?
No.
Okay, okay? That was actually a group that I used to be involved with. A lot of these groups have they're nervous about working with the boy right now. You know what I mean? But I'm mad at them. You heard of a Cenk from the Young Turks, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then you know Kyle Kalinske, right? And you know how they started Justice Democrats? Well, they also
Hmm.
about the
Right.
same time started this thing called Wolfpack that was really Cenk's deal, and it's his idea to have a new amendment to the Constitution that somehow disallows like corporate like interest in affectation upon politics, or somehow it's supposed to clean things up. I think that's a
Hmm.
cool idea. It's supposed to be like a bipartisan thing, or not party focused, which I like. Uh, Unfortunately, that organization, they were kind of lively. They had like a lot of calls going on to senators and stuff. Then it kind of died down a little bit. I kind of stopped getting so involved. Now there's a guy publishing more, but I've been reaching out to them, but they haven't reached back. And there's some kind of like other stuff. There's a lot of infighting with a lot of groups. Yeah. Have you worked with any? Now, one way that a lot of people have stayed involved is working on presidential campaigns. Did you work on any campaigns, anything like that?
Well, I did when LaRouche ran for president 8 times. The last time was 2004. I also ran for office myself in New Jersey. I've moved recently to New York, but I ran for U.S. Congress twice. I ran as a Democrat calling for Obama to be impeached. And then that was a lot of fun, you might imagine. And then I ran as an independent against Chris Christie in 2013, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
So I mean, like, how's it worked? How's it been working out though? Like, you think that what's going to make it this time different?
I think the population, one, we're really near the edge. We're in such a world of extremes. The war danger is extreme. The financial situation is very precarious. On the other hand, you have a great potential. I think it's very good that Trump revived the space program. You have to have a science driver. But just having a science driver doesn't mean that you automatically eradicate poverty, right? I think we should really look at what China has done in that regard. We wouldn't do the same thing. We're not the same form of government, but it is amazing to me that you could go from where China was at the time of the Cultural Revolution under Mao and completely transform everything and have a population which is coming out of poverty, which is optimistic, with
Like,
a huge number of
as,
classical
as a
musicians.
fellow activist, right? As someone who's even campaigning,
Yeah.
right? I interview so many candidates and they don't even know who Assange is. They are just right. They've never. I talk even like about issues that are like in their own district. They have no idea, right? They're very like maybe they did one thing, right? Maybe they marched one time for like health rights, and that's what they're all about, and that's it. They have no other knowledge of anything else to do with politics or governance at all. Yeah, that's
Right.
and the education level is really low. And how do we, right? And as an organizer, I'm sure you've experienced that, right? You're out on the streets trying to talk about your issues, and people, you see the blank stare. They're like, "But I'm riding with Biden," and you're like, "Oh my God, oh
Right.
my God." Yeah. So, like, how could we change that? How do we build the
Well, I
audience?
think
Right.
part of the work is getting done for us because people have been hit in the head with a few two by fours, like the
Yeah.
pandemic,
All right.
right? So they're beginning to. I think there's a lot of people now who are saying they're newly political. The problem is you don't want people to despair. People have to have a sense that they have power. And where does that come from? And that's where, I mean, I think Martin Luther King.
So I respect your perspective, your experience. What can I do to help? I'm pissed off, Diane. How can I help besides helping you? Besides helping campaign, which I'm willing to do.
Great.
What can I do? What's the best thing I can do? Because I'm fed up.
Um, well, you're doing a lot already. You're getting out there. You're having the debate. I mean, that's really important. We don't have enough debate. That's what I say on all of my symposia on Friday nights. People are on. I mean, they should endorse my campaign because I'm the best qualified to hold this office. But I don't care if they do or not. I don't care if they disagree, like what you're saying. If you can't have a disagreement, then how are you ever going to learn anything? I mean, does everyone actually think they're already perfect to begin with and all of our views about everything are perfectly formed? That would be a really terrible world.
Let's go find where Schumer is and let's go spark some discussions. You down? I know Diane's down. I see her at the real activist stuff, the real stuff. She ain't afraid of nothing. You know, I mean, that's cool. I like that. Yeah? All right. We'll make something happen. If they won't have a discussion, we'll take discussion to them. Yeah, cool?
Good. That's good. I would love it.
Excellent.
I
Okay.
would love for you should give his office a call and see if he'll do an interview with you.
Are there any other candidates that you met who are like out there like yourself, who kind of like, you see them kind of like hurtling against the wind because nobody got their back?
Well, I have a friend named Derek Gibson who's running as what he calls an independent Republican against Cuomo. And he began his campaign way before all the scandals emerged. And he has some real integrity, and he and I don't agree on everything, but he's out there. I see him at things all the time as I am.
You know, the people who watch my channel, I don't focus on getting everybody. You know what I mean? I mean, I would like that, of course. You know what I mean? But I could make get a lot more views if I like post about AOC all the time instead of like focusing on things like this. So the thing is, the people who do watch my channel are people like yourself who are committed activists. You get what I mean? So there's actually, a certain quality there, which is interesting and which is good. So let's see if we can really make some exciting, cool things happen. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Great.
Now I'm gonna
Yes.
ask. I have some groups that I work with, and I have to ask about their interests as well. But I just had to go off on a slight tangent from my usual interviews because you are just of such high interest, running against Schumer, right? Yeah, taking things on a state and a national level, right, versus the local level. So it's cool to make that leap. Now, first of all, I already asked about supporting Assange, but so you know, because I ask every candidate this, right, I have a record now of people who have supported Assange. So if they get elected in, we could even make an argument right away, or we know who our allies are right away. Yeah.
Great.
So the second, so if you have other things you want to ask for partnership on, I can make that happen. What about UBI? Do you support UBI?
No.
Okay, that's fine. That's good. I'm actually feel that I do support it, but I think a lot of people just do it blindly without any understanding of nuance. There's many ways that these programs designed to help the poor are actually weaponized against them, and UBI can very easily be done, very, very easily be weaponized against the poor. So I think that way too much of Yang Gang is supporting it without understanding, right? So tell me about your UBI position right quick.
Well, because I think it gets back to looking at money as primary, and you don't eradicate poverty by just giving people money. FDR made a very big point about the dignity of labor, that people want to know that they are creating something which will outlive their own short existence. And for many people, maybe that's raising a family and producing wonderful, brilliant children. We have an economy which isn't really conducive to doing that because people have to work 5 jobs. You can't stay home with the kids, and the education system is atrocious. So that's problematic. So I think, and this is why I said the China question is very interesting, because people were literally assigned to go and find out why people were poor. What's going on? Did you have a bad soil? Did you never learn a trade? Are you illiterate? What's the issue that's preventing people from actually developing their capacity to engage in something
Some
productive?
people may be surrounded by conditions of, discrimination, or, unfairly instilled poverty, or, that may cause them to rely on a system like UBI. But I understand what you're saying, and just so you know, there's a study out there called Rat Utopia, where which they put these rats and give them enough food and bedding, and they end up
Hmm.
all dying, right? Yeah, so a lot of people are supporting UBI blind, so I appreciate your nuance on it. Uh, so, it's all good, right? Let's go to the next one. I also work with some people with disabilities. And one thing that's
Hmm.
tragic for them is, as you know, minimum wage here in New York City is barely going to, and if even, meet your rent costs and food and stuff like that. But people with disabilities are making sub minimum wage. Can you actually agree that or help legislation that would make it so that people with disabilities can receive minimum wage as well?
Well, of course, they're doing the same work. I mean,
Okay.
that's sort of a no-brainer. But again, I would say we do have to look at the physics. You have to look at the physical aspect of this.
I get that, but let's say it like this,
Yeah.
right? The thing is that remember that minimum wage kind of starts as a negotiation point. You get what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
since I can pay you minimum wage, that's what you're getting until you negotiate a reason why it has to be more.
Right.
You get what I mean? So
Mhm.
I get what you're saying, as in terms of if someone with a physical disability just cannot produce at the level of a average person, right? Yeah, that right. But to start the negotiation right there, um, okay. So I get what you're saying if the work is equal, but if the work is not,
Well,
yeah,
the, from what you're saying, yeah, there should be a standard minimum wage. The problem we have right now, because of all these bailouts, is there's such hyperinflation that minimum wage doesn't actually pay for anyone to do much of anything.
yeah,
And
and
if you,
yeah, and how are they going to live
right,
on
if you,
that, right?
right, you can't. So the question is not to arbitrarily increase minimum wage. That's why I'm saying we want to shut down this Wall Street operation, put it through bankruptcy, because we got to take all this fluff out of. I mean, the cost to park or cross the bridge, this is
Sure.
outrageous.
Sure.
The
So
cost.
if we don't have the minimum wage, though, right? Yeah, and if we don't have the UBI, then how are we going to take care of these people with the
Well, no, what
disabilities?
I'm saying is you can have a minimum wage standard, but I'm saying whatever you set right now,
Okay.
sort of arbitrary, unless you create the conditions. I mean, I'll give you an example. My mother was a biochemist, but she worked as a church musician to pay for my father to go to medical school. Now, nowadays, no one could be a church musician and pay for someone to go to medical school. And medical school then, this was in 1963 or so, 62, 63, 64. Um, we lived in Maine. Maine had no medical schools, so if you went to Vermont, it was counted as in state. Do you know what the tuition was to go to medical school in the 1960s?
No.
$695 a semester.
Damn, that's a good deal.
I mean, so how do you compare? You can't even get a degree without like $1 billion worth of debt.
Well, our school system has been completely corrupted, and now it's just a sham, straight up. But the thing is that, right, once again, right, sorry to just dig on that one last issue, but the thing is that these people with disabilities that cannot produce at that level, so there will be some of them. Also, the fact is that, right, even if you are producing at the same level as someone else, right, like the fact that you have disabilities just makes it so when you walk in the door, right, the discussion starts at you getting lower pay. You know what I mean? Straight up,
I
right?
see,
Yeah.
yeah. No, no,
So,
you should have
yeah.
there should be some kind of subsidy or something. You have to make sure that
Okay,
people,
so subsidies would
yeah,
take care of it. Okay, that's cool. As long as you have
yeah,
a way, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Just right. I don't. The thing is that some people would get really hopped on being through one special way. I'm okay with many ways, right? Or any way as long as it's addressed. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because there is
yeah.
no perfect system. Just straight up. Yeah, I don't believe in perfect
No,
systems.
I
Yeah.
mean, the problem is, I'll tell you, we have to change the culture. We
Yeah, I
haven't
agree with that.
culture. We don't love mankind. We
I,
don't act out of love. Otherwise, you would have never had the situation that we had in the nursing homes and the VA. veterans places with this COVID pandemic. It just wouldn't have been allowed to happen.
You may find good synergy with the Tulsi people and Tulsi locals. They do have this aloha
Yes,
love message, so it might fit with you, might not. I don't know. Yeah, it's up to you. But
we've collaborated actually.
oh, really? Wow, interesting.
Mhm.
With Tulsi
Yeah,
directly?
her background, her people, and
Oh, interesting. I have to learn
yeah.
more. Well, can you tell me a little bit more? A lot of my uh, watchers are Tulsi fans. Yeah. So, yeah, what did you
Well,
do?
I had a friend, actually, Daniel Burke, who ran for U.S. Senate in 2020 in New Jersey.
You do get
And
around. That's true. Yeah.
yeah, and he was the one mostly working with a lot of the Tulsi network people who I would say the main point of agreement is ending all these crazy wars, I mean,
Appreciate.
herself being, military, I guess National Guard is what she is. So she's seen this. She knows what it is. And she has a really good strategic sense about her. We don't agree on certain other matters, but this is very important. I mean, it is what I told you. If we're going to have anything, we can agree, disagree. If we're not alive, there's no discussion.
I agree. I agree. I like that. Yeah. So now we're moving on to let's move on to people who are trans, right? A lot of times I've been homeless and I
Mhm.
see trans people as the most discriminated against. They have a rough time of it. So the people is there's some things that are exist for people who are in poverty situations like public housing, but sometimes people who are trans, even though there's no law that says it's okay to discriminate against trans people, they find themselves discriminated against in that sector where they're bounced out of public housing due to undocumented incidents, things like this. Yeah. How can we look out for a community like that where they're struggling, right, to get access to services such as public housing?
I think that's tough. I mean, I don't have a blanket solution. It is what I said. You have to value people for their humanity.
Hmm.
Every person is a person,
Okay.
and we look at things upside down. So,
So I'm going to throw out something at you. This is just one solution that's been suggested, just to see what your take would be on it. So,
mhm.
someone said, let's suppose that we'll say trans people are 1%, right? It's projected to be 1%, right? Of course, the numbers are all weird, but let's say it's 1% of the population, right? And then we see in public housing that they're only reaching 0.2%. So for some reason, right, it looks like they're being underserved by a factor of 5 or whatever. So
Mhm.
what we could do is we could say we could reserve certain housing or certain units around the city, right? That say these units or these floors are especially only for trans people, right? Yeah, to assure that they have until right some more equity is in servicing is attained. But this is controversial also because it's like sticking all the blacks into one building. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like
Yeah,
it's
and I
so
don't think I
yeah.
don't think you
Mm,
can do it that way.
okay.
I have a certain concern because it seems to me that there is a movement. I don't know the answers. I haven't studied this. Has this been always going on for thousands and thousands of years? I think part of the reason why this question of gender has become such a fixation um, is that again, it's a cultural question. We're I mean, we have problems in our society. There's great disparity between the way men and women are treated, right? Or what you're paid. So, given that that kind of difference exists,
Right.
then it creates a reason why someone would want to transition from one gender to the other because there's such a, and I also have been looking at pediatric studies on children who decide they want to change their gender. And doing the hormone therapy and all this stuff is very destructive. I mean, it's a terrible thing. And if
Right.
you're going to prey on children who don't even, I mean, when you go through adolescence, frankly, all of us, I think, if we're honest, would admit that you were insane when you were an adolescent. I mean, you've got raging hormones in every possible direction.
Right.
So I don't want to create a construct around this. People have to be treated fairly. They should not be discriminated against. We have to have a system that allows that.
Well, remember the question was originally, right, was not about whether trans itself, right, all of trans issues. some of the issues that
Right.
you are talking on right there, I'm not, definitely. I get what you're saying on that, but that wasn't really the issue. The fact that these are coming up are, I'm sure that would be concerning for
Right.
some of my audience. I see
Yeah,
reasons for concern there, but
if you're going to
really the question was
mandate,
originally, right? Yeah, if they're getting shortage of, or not access to certain facilities, and one of the reasons why I like bringing up the trans community is because I really like to stand for any community that is not heard, or who has trouble accessing the services, and just in general, right? Because the community that I side with most is probably the homeless community. And for
Mhm.
I was just speaking with another candidate the other day, and he was talking about upping the mental services. You get what I mean? But I was
Yeah,
like, as someone who has been homeless, please don't do that. You get what I mean? First of all, if you put a label of mentally ill on me, all of a sudden it justifies the system to do all kinds of stupid things to me that it really has no right to do because I'm mentally ill. Do not take away my agency from me. That's the thing that I need the most. Do not question my mental sanity. Get that shit out of here. Yeah? And then also, yeah, it's like, it's really dangerous, this type of thing. Yeah? So, anyways, sorry about that. So let's
that's
just,
okay.
but yeah, once again, there's a certain population, right? This could be any population that feels that they have trouble accessing services. How do we make sure that these communities, right, get the services that are, I guess you could say, that's fair? You know what I mean? Other communities
I,
are able to get them, but these communities are having trouble accessing them. How are we going to help them?
I think you have to listen. I think you have to listen to them and you have to find people who are willing to advocate for that.
Okay, that's cool. I appreciate that. Yeah, you're a real activist. You're on the ground, like getting it happen. You're showing up at the protests. So if someone's going to show up, it is her. So I got to give you props on that. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with you on this issue 100%, but that's
Right.
okay because you're out there. You're going to make it happen. So I have to work with the people that will make the future happen. And if there's someone in the space that's committed, who's been here for some time, it's Diane, right? Year after year, campaign after campaign. There's no question your commitment level. And that's something that I'd like to really just talk to my audience for a second and ask you guys to really start looking more from these people who are running for these offices and stuff like that. Did they just get in? How many issues are they really working on? You know what I mean? There's a difference there, So I appreciate what you bring to the table, Diane, for real, yeah? Can you share your information real quick for everybody who's watching? Tell them how they can find out more about you.
Sure. My website is sareforsenate.com and it's
Okay.
SAREFOR Senate.com.
Do you have like a YouTube or something?
Yes, you can Google, look me up on YouTube. I think you just say Diane Sare and you can find my channel. It'll pop up.
Okay.
And I'm
Diane. Yeah.
Diane, yes, one N. And I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Parler. Someone else is running my Instagram account because, frankly, I was not interested in figuring it out.
I'm
Yes.
not an Instagram person myself. I get that. Yeah. But you talked about those Fridays, those sessions. I'm interested. I'm just honestly check those out. I'm subscribing today
Oh,
for real.
definitely do.
Yeah.
You can find them actually on my website, sareforsenate.com, but they're also on my YouTube channel, every one of them. And
Okay.
we've had some really interesting guests and really interesting discussions.
I want to ask you about some other issues just real quick, but I mean,
Mhm.
I'm just really interested in you as a candidate for real. Yeah, you're definitely very different from a lot of other candidates, and I appreciate that a lot. Anyways, let's talk about reopening, right? People want to get back to their lives as normal, right? Yeah. What do you see as a timeline for
Well,
that
we
type of
had a
thing?
good laugh about this last night because I was talking to people who'd been in prison for 25 years and 5 years. And I said, I wish you could talk to all these people who are complaining about how they feel like they're in jail in the lockdown. And they just burst out laughing. They said, yeah, if you don't have to eat out of a garbage can, you're doing pretty well. But um, look, again, the culture. Why do people think that wearing a mask is like a civil rights violation? You know, it's surgeons wear them all day. You do it to protect other people, right? Or we did not take a scientific approach to this virus. You have some nations, New Zealand, China, South Korea, Vietnam. It did very well. They had 8 or 5 deaths per 1 million people. The US has about 1,800 now, I think. France has 18 or 1,900. The UK is like 2,000. Sweden, everyone says, oh, Sweden did so great. No, they didn't. They had like 1,500 deaths per million people. They didn't do great. It's
Yeah.
just that all people. So, what I want to say first is we didn't take an aggressive approach of testing. If you want to stop a virus, you have to know who has it. You have to have an aggressive approach to testing, and you have to have a, a quarantine unless you develop a vaccine and you get a certain level of immunity, which we might have. So now you have a problem because I don't think you can't have the lockdown's been too long. People are tired. You're having a lot of issues. It's very hard for children. I think the schools should be reopened in some way, but you have to fund people having what they need to reopen the schools safely. But the risk to children is less, although it's not true that they don't spread COVID. Um, so I think it's very complex. And I think we really have to put a lot more into caring for other people and not being so obsessed about my rights and my body when, I mean, I would never forgive myself if I got COVID and I infected someone who had a comorbidity that just dropped dead after 6 days. I think that would be a terrible thing.
Okay, I understand that. Um, you know, the thing is that there's a lot of skepticism about the disease in general, right? And then like the Johnson and Johnson, like, did they screw up the vaccine or not? There's like people aren't
Well,
sure.
can we
Yeah,
talk about that for a second?
yeah, because the
Because
thing is that a lot of candidates are talking about mandatory vaccination. How do you feel about that?
that's tough. I mean, there are some people who, I mean, also for medical reasons or, will have a reaction, shouldn't be vaccinated. I do think that um, barring such a reason like that, people in certain fields like healthcare, education, travel workers, um, it's going to have to be mandatory in certain employment, at least until you can get to like an 80% threshold.
Okay,
So I find that really tough.
I'm glad to have an honest answer on that. What about also travel or things like that? Because people are talking about using vaccine passport. How do you feel about those things?
I think that's necessary.
Okay,
I mean,
that's
we
fine.
want to actually stop this. And I must say, I find it a little incongruous that the people who are so up in arms about vaccine passports carry their smartphones everywhere. I mean, if you have a smartphone on you, forget it. They already know everything
Yeah,
about you, everything. So
yeah.
don't tell me that protecting getting sick is a violation of your civil rights. There is nothing new they're going to learn about you from a vaccine passport.
That's actually quite a you know an wise you know that's a reality. Yeah, if you don't think that they are tracking, yes, they are. Okay, they are. Um, I've been tracked. Whatever, just so you know. Yeah, I've been tracked.
You forget it,
I've
all
been
of us.
tracked. Okay. Anyways, yeah. So let's. So the thing that's with the reopening thing. Let's talk about education, right? Yeah. Now the thing is that education, there's something called SHSAT going on in New York City, right? On a statewide basis, there's some like gifted and talented programs like that, right? They're under attack. People want to get rid of
Mhm.
them. How do you feel about that?
You mean like the test to get into some of the specialty school, the science schools and things like that? No, I don't think we should lower the standard.
Okay.
Uh, I think that's a terrible thing. You have to have a standard. And I don't believe in things like the Common Core curriculum where you just test people and fire students if they can't make them do weird forms of mathematics or something. But to have a standard to get into a school where you want to produce competent, skilled people, I think you got to have a standard.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And sadly, I think our curriculum itself is just not really like designed very well either. Yeah, it's really
I
sad.
think that's a wild understatement.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah. So, okay, let's take a look at the police reform, right? Actually, maybe having a talking about humping Serpico shows up. Edwin Raymond, who actually testified against the New York Police Department for having quotas in the system, has shown
Hmm.
interest. My man Stephen Lee, who's also busted, some corrupt goings on in the Flushing Police Department, which is pretty cool. He should be attending. So, in terms of police reform, right? There's fun the police situation, people talking about that. What's your thoughts on that situation?
I think, again, this is really tough because the police is like the line of last resort. So you have a society with incredible poverty, drug problems, lockdown, all of the mental issues, and then suddenly the police are supposed to handle all of this. It's just not, it's unreal. It's not right. And I think if you're going to address it, I can't imagine, given the kind of things that police do very well and very effectively. And I was reading some statistics on the number of guns they take away from everyone every week without killing anyone. So obviously, some people know when other officers are doing things that are outrageous and criminal and destructive and out of line. But one aspect is clearly there's a code. You don't rat out someone else. You'd go along with it. So how do you change that? I think the cities where you didn't have riots, like Detroit after the George Floyd killing, they came together. The police, the clergy, the elected officials, they actually had an open dialogue about the issues and how to address it. And I think the only way you're going to solve it is something like that. Everybody has to have an involvement in this discussion, feel like they're being heard, and then come up with some solutions, because I wouldn't feel competent to say that I could propose exactly how everything should be reformed. I don't think I know
That's
this.
always true. I think that's always true. You know what I mean? Like as activists, they always try. When they try to shut us out, that's when there's problems. But when they're ready to have a dialogue with us, that's when we can move forward. So I really enjoy that answer. Like I said, you're definitely an activist. You're definitely out there on the front lines. So we, on that angle, we definitely have a very similar viewpoint versus some of these candidates who come in from, they've been a doctor somewhere or they've been like a businessman. You know what I mean? And then they have their idea of what being a politician is, right? They have an idea of what being a candidate, they have an idea of what activism is and community involvement is, but it's nothing like the real thing. So I appreciate your approach. Yeah, that's a true community activist approach. So that's pretty cool. So,
Thanks.
yeah.
I have to run very, very soon. I have conference calls and all kinds of things coming up.
No,
So
I respect your work. I respect your work ethic and your commitment. It is rare. Yeah. So thank you so much. And that's pretty much it. I did get your contact information right there. And when you do, where do you put out your information the most? On your website, on Twitter, or how do you reach out to the people?
my website and Facebook.
Okay.
That's where I get it out the most. But I'm about to start a newspaper because I can't say everything I want to say on Facebook, and I already had one video yanked off of YouTube. So
And Fridays is on YouTube? Fridays?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll look for that too. Hey, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
You were great.
Yeah, thank you
so much for coming
Yes,
on.
good. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's a dark day in our nation when high-level authorities will seek to use every method to silence dissent. The truth must be told.
And if you want the truth, you need to check out independent media producers just like myself, DJ L7. You should subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications when I release a new video.
Truth of these
We are
words
on all
is
the major
beyond doubt.
platforms. That includes Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube. Unfortunately, we have definitely seen that these mainstream outlets will cave to corporate interests, so we encourage you to join our independently moderated communities of Reddit and Discord. We also encourage you to subscribe to us on BitChute and Daily Motion so you can see the content that YouTube doesn't want us to let you see. Hey, now it's time for the most important part of the video. That's right. It's time for us to tell you about the Taking Action Group. Do you need an activist? Or maybe there's no activists around willing to help you with your cause and you need to learn to become an activist. That's exactly why we're here. Every week we get it with people from across the nation, in fact even sometimes internationally, and we develop strategies and a game plan to address the issues that are affecting all of us. Every week myself from New York City and of course my co-host Lisa from Los Angeles provide a coast-to-coast perspective on what's going on in the country. If you want to donate to help out with expenses, travel, equipment, stuff like that, then I definitely appreciate it, and you can hit us off at Venmo or PayPal. Thanks a lot. Hey, by the way, we also have a merch store, so check it out. my goodness, it seems like you've reached the end of the video, so make sure you check out some of our other videos. Make sure you subscribe. This is your last chance to do so thanks a lot. And looking forward to seeing you on the next one. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please comment below if you have any questions or issues you'd like me to address. And if you're an activist, the time to make things happen is now.